Well, there were two seemingly very disparate stories, just to put into our cauldron, put into our pot. They do have a nexus point. So let's see what they evoke in us when they meet. First is a story of a very well-to-do merchant. He was a very pious man. He followed the tenets of the religion of the day. He followed the rituals. He gave alms and charity and hospitality. And one day, it so happened that a great saint came by and asked for his hospitality, which he gave very readily. Well, after the visiting saint had been feted and really fed and given a place to rest, the saint said to the merchant, "I can see that you're a very, very good man." And he said, "I have the power to be able to take you directly to heaven." "Oh," said the merchant, "this is my greatest wish." "Oh," said the saint, "I can take you right now." Oh, said the merchant. "Oh," he said, well, you see, I'm a widower, and my son is only 10 years old, and so he's not old enough to take over my business, so I'm not quite ready to go to heaven yet." "Oh," said the saint, "well, when do you think you'll be ready?" And the merchant said, "Oh, well, maybe about 15 years, then my son will be old enough to take over my business." So the saint said, "Fine, I'll come back in 15 years' time." So the saint went off, and the 15 years passed, and good enough to his promise, the saint came back to the merchant's house. Well, there were children playing in the yard. There seemed to be a general sense of well-being. The servant who was there when the saint had been there the last time came out and greeted the saint, and the saint looked around and said, well, where is the merchant?" And the servant said, "Oh, he passed away 5 years ago of a heart attack, and now the house is his son's, and his son takes care of it. But please come in and have our hospitality." Now, when the saint came into the house, with his yogic powers, he noticed that there was a dog, a bitch, lying over by the doorway feeding her pups. She had about 8 pups, and she was wagging her tail like mad in greeting, and he was able to see with his insight that this was the merchant. So he started to converse with her. He said to her, I've come to take you to heaven. And the dog said, "Oh, this is my greatest wish, but I've got these puppies. And it's going to be another year before they're ready and they're taught the ways of the world, so I'm not ready yet to go." "Oh," said the saint, I'll come back in a year's time." So after receiving again great hospitality, the saint went off, and the year passed, and back he came. Well, the children were again playing in the yard. They'd grown, but it was a very happy household. And he looked around for the dog, and she was not to be seen. So when the servant came out and greeted the saint, And he said, "Oh, where is the dog?" And the servant said, "Oh, just a few months ago, some robbers came to the house, and she was so brave, she attacked them, but in the process, she was killed." But he was given hospitality and brought into the house. And again, with his yogic powers, there was a parrot in a cage hanging on the roof over there, and with his abilities he was able to see that this was the merchant reincarnated in a parrot. So again he started to communicate with the parrot, and he said, "Well, I can take you to heaven right now." And the parrot said, "Well," he said, "really, this is a very comfortable place. The family is so good to me. They love me. I'm allowed out of the cage. I can fly onto the children's shoulders, and they feed me well and take care of me well. I'm not ready to go." So the saint, after receiving his hospitality, left, never to return again. And then there's that old story told before about the very old Jewish man. He'd lived a long life. He'd lived a good life. Again, he was pious. He kept the tenets of his religion assiduously. He gave alms to the poor to the extent that in his old age, in this age of dotage, he had absolutely nothing. He was very, very poor. In fact, he lived only on that which was the largesse of others now, a crust of bread here and a few vegetables there from the grocer. But then one day when he was sitting in his very humble abode, studying the scriptures, there was a knock on his door. When he opened the door, it was another old man, very frail, leaning on a wooden stick. And the visitor asked, "Could you give me hospitality for the night? I have nowhere to rest." And the old man said, "Oh, you're most welcome, but I have nothing. I have very little to share with you, but please come in." Well, sharing the few crusts of bread that the old man had, they had a very amicable night discussing the ways of spirituality and so forth. In the morning, when the visiting old man was about to leave, just as he was standing outside the door, he said to the old pious man, "I can see that you've been a very, very good man in your life. So I give you my staff." And he handed to him his walking stick, a piece of gnarled wood. The old man accepted it graciously, and he turned back to see where the visitor had gone. It was like he'd disappeared. And he thought to himself, "Oh, could it be that this was some special saint that was visiting me?" He had that little feeling inside his being. Well, his life, of course, continued to be poor, but not long after, he was walking down the street with his staff in his hand when it got stuck in a crevice in the road. And when he bent down, there, when he was pulling it out, was a silver coin. And with this silver coin, he was able to not only buy bread for himself, but he was able to give alms to others, to the poor. Sometime later, the village was beset by a group of robbers, And he was able, single-handedly, with his staff, to get out in the street and beat off these robbers. Well, it was clear that there was something very special about this staff and the visitor who had come to his door. And he thought to himself, could it be the great saint and prophet Elijah that had come to me? But this staff, this stick, became his life. It obviously could do miracles. Well, because of the great thing that he'd done in saving the people of his village when the marauders came by, and knowing that he was a good man, and the villagers also knew that the greatest wish of this old man was to spend his last days in Jerusalem, they took up a collection to enable him to fulfill his dream of traveling to Jerusalem to live out his last years. So, with the money that he'd been given, he set out, and his journey was going to take him on a wagon, and then to the seaside where he would have to catch a ship and so forth. It was a long, long journey. But after a few days traveling in the wagon, the wheel of the wagon broke off, and it was going to take some time for it to be repaired. So the old man, having descended from the wagon while it was being repaired, decided to go for a walk. And nearby there was a small knoll or hill. So he walked off and found a pathway which led up to the top of this hill. And on the top of the hill there was a magnificent tree, a great tree, its branches spreading far over, hanging down the sides. But as he walked up close to the tree and looked up, he noticed that there was a broken branch, raw, jutting out from within his reach, the jagged ends of the branch just looking very bare there in comparison with the great greenery of the remainder of the tree. And then he looked down at his staff, and looked up at the tree, and down at his staff. It was the same wood, the same knobs on his staff as appeared on the branches of the tree. So he took his staff and he raised it up to where the jagged edge of the broken. Immediately they fused together, and within moments his staff began to grow, twigs and leaves, and as he watched, blossoms began to appear. He walked down the hill and the wagon had been repaired. So he completed his journey. He took a ship to Jerusalem, and there he led a very happy life. He became what was considered to be a wise man. People came to him. He seemed to be rejuvenated with a new lease of life. One day he happened to be passing by the Wailing Wall. When he looked down, there at his feet was a leaf, and he picked it up And he knew, without any doubt and without any question, this was a leaf from the tree in which he had left his star. He continued to live to a very, very old age and passed away peacefully and happily in his beloved Jerusalem. What do these two stories, when they meet in us, evoke from you? What is it that rises up from their meeting? These two stories, like the star and the tree, looking now at this place and the question that's been asked, where are we? What happens? What is the meaning of life for us now? When existence, knowledge and bliss, such a demander, no longer holds us in its thrall. And what is the price we pay?
It was interesting, in the first story, there was a story about opportunity of going to heaven, and that person was never ready, so he was never present and always attached to whatever he was doing, and felt that if he left that situation it wouldn't work, whereas if he probably left it probably would have. So he was rather attached to that, and therefore because he's attached he couldn't take the opportunity that was in front of him. Whereas the other person in the other story seemed to be available and present all the time for anything that came along to him, and he seemed to know what to do at the right time because of that. And so when he saw the tree, he just knew the stick went in, he just knew it, and he just did that, and then the leaf appeared and he just knew that was there. He was very present, whereas the other person wasn't.
No. And how does that relate to our life and the possibility that we still have attachment to what those levels of such a demand bring to us? What does it mean when we see and understand these stories in relationship to our recognition that maybe we still have a thread of attachment? We might even still have this staff, it's our life that we hold on to, no matter what it is. It gives us the opportunity to recognize.
It's interesting because I'm going through a similar thing at the moment. I'm being asked to let go of something and allow new opportunities to come in. I don't know what those new opportunities are, but that definitely is going by the way. And so it's been a bit of a process for me letting go of it, and I've noticed I've been attached to it. So it's been interesting.
It's interesting.
It's interesting to let go of the possibility of new opportunities as well, because if you really let go and there's nothing, what's the end?
He went empty-handed. The old
That's
man
right.
was empty-handed.
Yeah.
He no longer had a staff.
He gave up the means,
Yes.
that the thing that had got him so far, he actually let go of it
Yes.
and walked to his bliss
Yes.
empty-handed.
And we also know that the universal law is that when you give, you receive, and so you don't have to worry about anything if you're giving. And so you just can be present. You know you've looked after.
But what's the difference, Richard, when we move out of that place where those laws are no longer operational? Because the law of giving and receiving are within the realm of existence and creation. When we move beyond such a demanding, we move beyond those laws. What is it that's operational then? What is it that brought the peace, tranquility and bliss, which was obvious in this old man, even though he had nothing in Jerusalem? What is it then that is operational outside of those laws to bring about this state?
Is it just being?
Being is an act, isn't it? Being is an act of being. We're no longer acting.
It's beyond that.
We're no longer doing.
Selflessness comes for me.
Selflessness is absolutely it. And we know from our experiences what selflessness does for us. It's freedom. And we've had those moments, but when we live in that state constantly, what does it bring? What is this place?